Have you ever heard of a place that just ceased to exist? A place that was there one day and gone the next, taking every single one of its inhabitants with it. Today, we're venturing deep into the heart of the Amazon rainforest to uncover one of South America's most unsettling and enduring mysteries, the lost village of Hoer Verde. Our story begins in 1923. Deep within the dense, emerald jungles of Brazil, there was a small, unassuming village called Hoer Verde. It was home to about 600 people, a quiet community living simple lives, completely enveloped by the vast, untamed wilderness. They were seemingly disconnected from the bustling world outside, their days dictated by the rhythm of the forest. But one morning, that rhythm stopped. An entire village, in the blink of an eye, vanished without a trace. It started when a group of traveling merchants, who regularly passed through the area, arrived at Hoer Verde expecting the usual sounds of life: children playing, chickens clucking, people chatting. Instead, they were met with an unnerving, profound silence. The air was heavy and still. As they cautiously entered the village, the scene became even more disturbing. Doors to the small, thatched roof homes hung wide open, swaying gently in the breeze. Inside, tables were set for meals that were never finished. Pots of food sat cooling over extinguished fires. Tools were left mid-task, and personal belongings lay untouched. It was as if every man, woman, and child had simply evaporated in the middle of their daily routines. There were no signs of a struggle. No bodies, no blood, no chaos. Just a ghost town, frozen in a single, silent moment. The chickens and other livestock wandered aimlessly, the only living things left in a place that once teemed with human life. The travelers, shaken to their core, rushed to the nearest town to alert the authorities. Days later, when a small police force finally made its way through the treacherous jungle terrain to Hoer Verde, they found the village exactly as the travelers had described it. The scene was so eerie, so unnatural, that it defied all logical explanation. But it was inside the small, one-room schoolhouse that they found the mystery's most chilling clue. Scrawled across a dusty chalkboard in Portuguese were four haunting words: "Não há salvação." There is no salvation. Those words sent a cold shiver down the spines of everyone present. What could they mean? Was it a warning? A final, desperate message? Who wrote it, and where did they go? The investigation began, but every path led to a dead end. One of the first theories was an attack. The early 1920s in Brazil were a time of political instability, and rebel factions were known to operate in remote regions. Investigators scoured the village for any evidence of violence: bullet holes, signs of fire, looted homes. They found nothing. Valuables were left behind, and the village itself was perfectly intact. If it was an attack, it was unlike any they had ever seen. So, what about mass migration? Perhaps the villagers decided to leave, driven by famine, disease, or the promise of a better life elsewhere. This theory also crumbled under scrutiny. If an entire community of 600 people decided to pack up and move, they would have taken their most valuable possessions, their livestock, and supplies for the journey. They wouldn't have abandoned half-eaten meals on their tables. Furthermore, a migration of that size would have left tracks, a trail, some indication of where they were headed. But the surrounding jungle was pristine. There were no footprints, no cleared paths, no makeshift camps. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. With no logical explanations left, the story of Hoer Verde began to take on a life of its own. Strange rumors and whispers spread like wildfire through the nearby settlements. Some locals claimed they had seen bizarre, silent lights hovering in the sky over the jungle on the night the village disappeared. Others recalled hearing a low, unearthly humming sound that seemed to vibrate through the valley, followed by an abrupt, and total silence that lasted for hours. These tales, dismissed by officials as folklore, only added to the growing legend. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the mystery of Hoer Verde remained unsolved. The search efforts were eventually called off. The jungle, relentless and patient, began to reclaim what was once its own. Vines crawled over the empty homes, trees grew through the floors, and a thick blanket of green slowly erased all evidence that a village had ever stood there. Nature itself seemed determined to bury the secret. Decades passed, and the story of Hoer Verde faded from official records, becoming little more than a ghost story told around campfires. But the mystery was far from over. In the 1960s, a team of academic researchers, intrigued by the legend, decided to launch a new expedition. Armed with old maps and coordinates rumored to mark the village's location, they set out to find what remained of Hoer Verde. And this is where the story takes an even stranger turn. They couldn't find it. The coordinates they had led them to a featureless, dense stretch of jungle. There was no clearing, no ruins, no sign that a community had ever existed there. It was as if the land itself had shifted, or the maps were wrong. Some of the researchers began to suspect a cover-up. Had the government deliberately scrubbed Hoer Verde from the maps and archives to hide a terrible truth? This theory gained traction when historians tried to dig into the official records. References to the village were suspiciously scarce. Documents that should have mentioned Hoer Verde were missing. Photographs that allegedly showed the village before 1923 were either lost in fires or damaged beyond recognition. It seemed someone or something wanted Hoer Verde to be forgotten forever. Was it a failed social experiment? A quarantine gone wrong? The lack of evidence made any conclusion impossible. The story might have ended there, a forgotten piece of folklore, if not for a startling claim in the 1980s. A journalist from Sao Paulo, obsessed with the legend, tracked down an elderly man living in a remote part of the Amazon. This man claimed his grandfather was one of the few who was away from Hoer Verde on the day it vanished. He was a trader and returned to find his entire world gone. The journalist pressed the old man, asking what his grandfather believed had happened. The man, with fear in his eyes, leaned in and whispered a cryptic, chilling sentence. They were taken, but not by people. He refused to say another word, leaving the journalist with more questions than answers. Taken, but not by people. What did he mean? The words echo the strange lights and the humming sounds reported decades earlier. It points to a theory that many have whispered but few have dared to say out loud. Was the disappearance of Hoer Verde an event of extraterrestrial origin? An abduction on a mass scale so clean and so absolute that it left no evidence behind? It sounds like science fiction, but in a mystery with no rational explanation, the impossible starts to seem plausible. To this day, the fate of the 600 souls of Hoer Verde remains one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. No bodies, no graves, and no definitive proof have ever been found. Some historians maintain that the entire story is an elaborate hoax, a piece of folklore that spiraled out of control. But others, the ones who have looked into the fragmented evidence and heard the hushed whispers from the Amazon, believe the village was real. They believe that something catastrophic and unexplainable happened in that remote corner of the jungle. So, what do you think? Was Hoer Verde the site of a forgotten tragedy, expertly covered up by those in power? Or was it something else entirely, a gateway to another dimension, a paranormal event, or an encounter with visitors not of this world? Perhaps the message on the chalkboard, "There is no salvation," was not a cry for help, but a final, stark realization of their inescapable fate. Somewhere, buried under a century of jungle growth, the secrets of Hoer Verde may still be waiting, a silent testament to a day when an entire village was erased from the face of the earth. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you have your own theories about what happened to the people of Hoer Verde, I'd love to read them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed diving into history's most baffling mysteries, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. See you next time.